In this tutorial, we'll run down some features of the script and the timeline. Starting with the script, there are 4 basic view modes. The first is normal snippets, which is default. The second is synopsis view, which is all of the snippets collapsed. This gives a nice overview for rearranging plot, and you can expand individual snippets if you want to jump into editing. The third mode is content only, which makes you less aware of the beat names so you can concentrate on the text. And the fourth mode is final script, which removes all structure so you can get a sense of how the text flows. But you can still edit if you need to. The typical mode is normal snippets. The full screen mode has its own view settings, so we can switch just this view to final script. Then I can switch back and forth between working and reading the final result. In terms of margins, Causality thinks a bit differently about this than you're used to. Normal margins waste a lot of space around the script. But selecting mini margins trims off the white space without touching the layout and the line breaks. And if you're on a small monitor or you want more space for working, we created 2 more modes. First, squeezed, which actually squeezes the margins and changes the layout. And super squeezed, which does it even harder. This is just a display mode. It doesn't change the text. You can always switch back to mini margins. Next, let's talk about rearranging snippets. Snippets are typically written to reflect their location, like the way this snippet in a cafeteria mentions a waitress. And snippets are also written to go smoothly into each other. We want to keep this flow even as we make big changes to the sequence. For that reason, Causality tracks sequence changes and alerts you with a red line to rewrite any snippets that are in a new place in the script. The snippet now happens in a car, so I'm going to rewrite it to reflect that location. And the snippet was written to go straight into another snippet, so I'll rewrite the ending. And then I can cancel the reminders. Scene headings are normally decoupled from snippets, both so that we can have multiple beats in one scene, and so that we're free to move the beats around. Because it often doesn't really matter in what location events happen. It's the same secret whether we tell it in the car or in the cafeteria. When the location matters, like here where they're discussing the engine, you should enable the location pin. Now Causality will keep the current location for this snippet no matter where you move it. So as I drop it in the middle of a hospital scene, it'll cut to the car. And it also cuts automatically back to the hospital afterwards. So all you have to do is enable location locking for any snippet where you care, and then you never have to think about it again. Location locking is on by default for all new snippets, and you can change the default in the menu. Next, snippets often grow to contain many separate beats, and you might want to split them. To split a snippet, simply place the cursor, right-click, and select Split Snippet. Now, since story points are already linked to the snippet, you need to choose who gets the story points after the split, the first half, the second half, or both of them. You typically choose the first. Notice how the first snippet kept all the story points. You should then name the snippet by double-clicking in the title. And then you should drag the snippet over into your story logic to create a story point. Finally, let's talk about the timeline. First, if you right-click in the header, you can select which overview tracks are shown here. The timeline has a separate configuration for when the story logic is in full screen, because we need it to be as small as possible, so fewer tracks are shown. And secondly, the timeline can work in 3 different time bases that you select by right-clicking, either time, pages, or events. Any new document starts in event mode because all your snippets are empty. Later, when more has been written, you can switch to time mode or page mode. For any mode, you have a secondary counter to also show the time from one of the other modes. So now I'm seeing time and pages together. Finally, you can zoom in the timeline using either -= or cursor key up-down.